Stop this. A voice spoke to itself, a pale form slowly blurring into view, the stench of my surroundings the first thing to assault my senses. Decay. Rotting meat made the air thick and grimy, the ground physically moist beneath me as I heard dripping both near and far in the surrounding darkness. When they realize what you've done to them. The voice continued whispering to itself, dying out as silver eyes flashed to greet me, instantly going wide. John? Lily whispered, scrambling closer. John! I couldn't do anything but strain in panic, my entire body feeling sluggish and delayed as I fumbled for a handhold in the darkness. I slowly realized that her hand was gripping mine. It had been since before I even awoke. Lily? I coughed, feeling the shredded flesh of my throat rip open anew at my words. Are you okay? I think so, she stammered. Better now, I think. What happened? How much do you remember? My head exploded in agony, fuzzy memories seeping back like an elusive fog. The killer, I stammered. She was trying to hide us for some reason. There were explosions, service went down. Sarah brought a gun to school. Something was wrong with her. Oh, Lily whispered, sinking away again, voice going monotone. That's what I remember too. More or less. Thought maybe I was making it all up for the past few hours. Hoped I was. How long have you been awake? I stammered, searching my surroundings more, the space far too dark to make out much of anything. Any indication of how long we've been here? It's nighttime now, Lily spoke softly. My phone has been out of batteries for a while, and I couldn't find yours, but during the day there was a little bit of sunlight that seeped through a crack above us. I used it to check your watch. Since I've been awake, it's only been about 6 hours. I nodded slowly. I checked my pockets as well, confirming that my phone wasn't anywhere on me. I was able to faintly recall dropping it as I tripped on whatever strange wire Halogen had set up. That would have meant it was still in the school. But when I checked after first waking up, Lily continued slowly, we had lost nearly a day and a half. I choked, sitting further upright in disbelief. You were fading in and out for some time, Lily continued, gripping my hand harder. I can only assume I was doing the same. I felt along my surroundings, realizing we merely appeared to be under some floorboards or in some kind of attic. Did you not try escaping? I spoke, moving my hand to press against the wood above us, feeling how it bent like putty, so wet and saturated it bared no resistance at all. It took me an hour or two to get the bindings off, Lily stammered, gesturing to a pile of cloth by my feet, the material barely visible in the darkness. And just as I got the last one free, I heard voices above us. I was about to call out to them. I met her eyes, feeling her hand clench tighter as she softly continued. But they weren't right, John. I didn't know how we had gotten here. I guess I now know that it was the killer's doing, but you also said that you thought they were trying to hide us. I nodded slowly. I instantly got the same feeling, Lily whispered, glancing up nervously. Something told me it was for our own good, John. I recognized some of the voices, people from our town, but they weren't talking like how normal people should. Her eyes flashed back to me, constricting in utter fear. They wouldn't stop talking about sick people. She shuddered, continuing to drop her tone in volume. I learned that there are corpses directly above us. So many. 30 or 40, John. This place is some kind of burial ground. People came and went in waves, but it's been 30 minutes now since I've heard anything above us. I don't think anyone comes here at night. I think they're scared. Scared of what? I stammered, craning my ears to listen into the seemingly vacant space above us. The killer? No, Lily stammered, her hands nearly breaking mine as her fingers suddenly cracked with intense pressure. Zombies, she hissed, what they never stopped referring to as the sick. She slammed my hand to the floor. That's what I'm saying, she hissed. They weren't right in the head, John. They genuinely didn't think they were joking, and I've heard several distant gunshots throughout the time I've been awake. I heard someone frantically proclaim that if your phone gets a call from a number consisting of letters within brackets, it's a call from the dead, and if you answer it, you'll contract the sickness. They don't even realize how insane they sound. I don't know how this happened so fast, but it's almost like the town erupted into anarchy overnight. My heart stuttered over the next several beats. What did they say about the sickness? I wheezed. It doesn't matter, Lily cried. It's all bullshit, John. Her eyes crawled with our shadowy surroundings. I studied the AIDS epidemic first semester, John, she spoke. This is a play-by-play retelling of what happened with the hysteria in Africa. No one knows what the hell they're talking about, and fear is causing people to both make and accept outrageous claims. Zombies aren't real, John, and there's no way you can contract any disease from a cell phone call. One man claimed that just looking at sick people in the eyes will spread it. But spread what? I cried. What are they so scared of? What is the sickness? They say those who are sick become inhuman and violent, Lily spoke, less responsive to reasoning and lashing out when questioned. Someone said they saw the infected die within a few hours, but others claim it takes several days, still more saying it only affects those already dead. No one knows anything, and no one is listening to reason. There is no such disease. How could there be? How can such an epidemic just spring up so suddenly? This frenzy over the serial killer is making people fabricate... Rusted eyes? I stammered slowly, glancing to meet Lily's gaze. Pale skin and dark saliva. Her eyes widened, disbelief eroding her features. The same guy who screamed about not looking them in the eyes mentioned that retinas begin to decay in the final stages, Lily spoke slowly. I'm not so sure about saliva, but of course they would be pale if they're supposed to look sick. Her eyes narrowed. Why? She continued. Who did you hear that from? Did you ever wake up before me? Lily, I stammered slowly. No one told me about it. I pressed against the floorboards above us again, slowly testing the strength. Now is our chance to get out of here then, I continued, coming to realize that the boards above us weren't only easy to move because they were wet. They were also separate from the rest of the floor. They were meant to be opened. You're sure you haven't heard anything in a while? I asked, turning back to Lily. Wait, what? Lily hissed. John, back up. What are you talking about? What do you mean no one told you? Something was clearly wrong with Sarah. I spoke softly. You could see it just as well as me. We could all see it. She looked half dead, and the color in her eyes looked like it was flaking away. It was the same with Yoni. There are no missing persons. I'm willing to bet that they all met similar fates. And I'm willing to bet that they're all decomposing above us. This is where they were dumped. It may be true that we don't know anything about what's happening here, but we can't rule a disease out of the question. If people truly are losing their minds, it's hard to believe that just a serial killer alone could cause such panic. Is there a disease that could alter people's conscience? Lily just stared blank-eyed at me, fingers twitching at the sleeves of her hoodie. Marcus, I spoke slowly, eyes narrowing. He was sick in the week prior to his death as well. You heard the strange, delusional calls he left our house, and nobody saw him for days. When the killer stabbed him, it seemed to be out of panic rather than a desire to kill him. She was trying to lead him somewhere, but whatever sickness he had began to kill him before she could do so. So, the killer's using some kind of... Lily stammered slowly. Biological weapon or something? There's not a disease that can alter conscience, John. The umbrella term of dementia involves things like Alzheimer's, but that's not a disease. It's a symptom of far more complex and long-term neurological problems. Maybe in extremely rare cases of rabies or something? That's really pushing it, though. You think the killer is spreading this? I don't think it's directly contagious, I continued, nodding. She had some kind of needle to inject something. And black saliva, Lily stammered. That's a sign of it too? Did Marcus... I don't think the dark saliva is from the sick people. I cut her off. I think their saliva is still normal. The black substance is just spilling up excess. Vomit, I guess. The killer first introduces it by kissing victims. It must be some kind of catalyst for whatever the needle injects. Something to start the reaction. Why would the killer store a catalyst in their mouth? Lily stammered. Couldn't they just inject it separately? Or together? How soon do the two need to be introduced between each other to be effective? I don't know. I spoke slowly, my heart clenching with every sluggish beat. I still felt the saliva in my throat, and I had been stabbed by her needle as well. But the two events were nearly a week apart. Hopefully, they have to be introduced more or less together for the sickness to take, I continued, the queasiness in my stomach growing. That would make it harder to infect people, Lily thought out loud. But how can you be sure it doesn't begin to transmit between people once taking hold of a first host? For just one person to supposedly infect so many, it just doesn't make sense. Is it viral or bacterial? What's the incubation period like? To make Sarah bring a handgun to school, to suddenly become so suspicious of you, you can't attribute that to a disease, John. It's not just strange, that's physically impossible. I agree, it doesn't make sense, I sighed, scratching at my scalp. And you're right, that we don't know enough to say much of anything. There have to be other factors at play, but we aren't going to stick around and find out. The killer can't possibly have planned to keep us here for this long. I paused for a minute, remembering how she had said she would be back in 8 to 10 hours. If she still hasn't come back for us, I stammered, for whatever purpose she had in mind, then something went wrong. We have to leave this town as soon as possible. The roads are closed, Lily stammered, slowly crouching beside me. The bridges are out too, that's what I heard people saying. Someone even talked about a fence through the woods. Someone is trying to keep us in. And supposedly, it's working. What? I cried. I knew about the bridges, but who? Who is doing all of this? People can climb over a fence if they want to or break it down. The only way a fence works is if it's being patrolled or something. Who would do that? Other people in the town, Lily stammered. John, I'm serious when I say they've lost it. They talked about killing people at the first signs of sickness, and they're not letting anyone out, sick or not, until they figure out what's causing it. That's insane, I hissed. It's hysteria, Lily corrected. With so many people entirely uninformed and the death toll already so alarmingly high, fear and panic meant that the first ideas to be introduced just stuck, no matter how absurd. From what I've been able to gather, someone suggested we stop the sick from spreading the disease into the city, and some people got on board. And then more people. The movement quickly spiraling out of the hands of any one person, the mob mentality pushing the town into our current state. Now, the border-stationed people are too afraid to let anyone out and too suspicious of each other to back down. You said the sickness might spread like a normal disease because it would be impossible for one person to supposedly infect so many others by themselves, right? I started slowly, meeting Lily with worried eyes. What if they had help? A lot of help. Her eyes widened. Halogen, I spoke slowly. That's the name of the killer I met, and who I thought was the only one. But just before taking us here, she said that they referred to each other by their coat brands. They? Each other? Lily echoed, horror growing. There's more than one killer. How many others? I don't know, I stammered, but I'm willing to bet more than a few of them are on the inside of whichever group is trying to so radically reform the town, stirring the pot and further inciting this hysteria. They want this to happen. They want us to turn on ourselves. There are people in this town who have been a part of this all along. I thought back to Asa, my fists clenching. Halogen had said she was manipulating me, trying to frame me, and although I always knew that, I somehow couldn't believe it was that simple. I just couldn't believe her motivations were that shallow. There was something more there, something more to the story. On my side or not, her and Halogen were the only ones who could possibly give me the information I needed. All I knew was that if I saw either of them again, we had a thing or two to talk about. The corpses were wall to wall, even more than Lily had estimated. The sight remained charred into my vision long after I closed my eyes. Ghastly forms piled like discarded lumber inside the warehouse, the very air seeming to crawl with flies and maggots. There was something wrong with the bodies, too. It wasn't apparent at first, but having to push directly past several to crawl up from under the floor meant that it was hard to not notice details. The cadavers were all at varying stages of decay, some just beginning to go stiff while others were mere puddles of rot. But no matter what, their skulls were all mangled to some extent, dented, broken into pieces, or absent altogether. The rest of the bodies were usually scrape-free, so I imagine the head wounds were where most of the blood came from. Did that mean the head wound was the injury that killed them? If that was the case, they were killed here, Lily stammered, taking the words from me. All of these people were brought here alive. Why? Before I could talk, she continued. A while ago, you mentioned that you wanted to learn the killer's motivations. Did you learn anything about them when you talked to Halogen? An individual can pick victims at random for pleasure, but a group of killers, they have to have motivation beyond the act itself. What do they want? That's what's bothering me too, I stammered. Halogen warned me about Sarah. Tricked us into a trap seconds later, but she did still warn me that Sarah had a gun. If the disease is what caused Sarah to attempt to kill me, and that was against what Halogen wanted, either Sarah acted unexpectedly, or someone else wanted Sarah to kill me, and Halogen is working independently against them. So, she may be separate from the group trying to purge this town. Lily paused. But why hide us? To protect us from the hysteria? That would indicate she knew it was coming. How? And what use does she have for us? None anymore. I thought out loud slowly. That's why she never came back for us. She left a murder scene in the nurse's office at the school. Something people would have immediately contributed to us as we were the only two to enter the room. She then hid us to further imply our guilt in that we had fled, Lily spoke slowly, piggybacking off my words, giving the town 2 people to pin the blame on. That would have calmed the hysteria, I agreed. She was trying to stop this madness from happening by framing us for everything. With clearly identified killers, no one would have turned on each other. The fear of the sudden disease outbreak would have joined them together against us, a common enemy. So why didn't it work? Lily pondered. I don't know, I sighed. Maybe things got out of hand too fast for people to even realize what happened to us, or another factor incited distrust amongst each other. Either way, if the rest of the killers in the group wanted the hysteria, and Halogen was attempting to stop it, she may be on our side. For now. I finally put my full weight on my right leg for the first time, and alongside a slew of unimaginable pain from my bruised joints, I also felt something else. Something hard and rectangular in my shoe. I hobbled awkwardly, quickly fishing around and pulling it out before staring at it in disbelief. My phone. No missed messages, no missed calls, still 0 cellular bars, and no wireless signal. I glanced to Lily before quickly rummaging through the options and recent calls. The warehouse creaked around us, deep, eerie groans spreading through the foundation. Flies continued to buzz in such numbers they seemed to constitute the air itself. The sound was maddening, my feet stepping over puddles of decay as I slowly worked my way to what appeared to be the door outside. Do you think I could call her? I stammered, seeing that the strange series of letters Halogen had used to call me didn't show up on my phone anywhere. There was no trace that the call had happened at all. Halogen was using some kind of radio, but if she could call me, there has to be a way to call her back. No. Lily's voice crawled forwards, pale hands slowly pulling out from her blood-soaked hoodie as her form stopped in front of me. What? I stammered. You're never going near her again, Lily continued, an instant chill descending in the air. You're not going to talk to her, either. She can't be trusted, John. She's not on our side. I didn't say that. I stammered. Of course we don't trust her, but we need to know what's happening, and if... Don't leave me. She spoke coldly and bluntly, eyes piercing upwards through dark hair from her bowed head. I slowly raised my hand from my side, only to have her own hand rush forwards and slam it back in place, fingers curling around to hold it down. When Mom went to the hospital, she continued in monotone, "You promised me we would get through this. Together. Like we always do." Her pupils constricted into pinpricks, fingers beginning to break mine with her ever-tightening grip. The phone dropped from my hand to the floor with a sharp crack. "We trust each other, and no one else," she spoke slowly. "We will not fall into the hysteria." Her other hand finally flopped out from her hoodie, a blade glinting in the dim light of the warehouse. "I was awake," she continued softly, "when Halogen and you spoke. I couldn't move, but I heard and saw everything." Her eyes widened as my hand went dead white with the force of her grip. The cleaver flashed briefly, lifting slowly from her side. "When she went to stab me," Lily continued, lips beginning to part, "I saw him, you know." I flashed with horrid sickness, shrieking ghosts crawling through my mind as Lily's dead gray eyes ate away into my vision, blocking out my peripherals. My attempt to back away was met by unresponsive muscles. Lily's growing maniacal smile seemed to screech with tearing skin as it ripped apart her face. "I liked that last time," she continued, voice omnipresent and crawling with legs like countless insects burrowing into my ears. I felt the cold press of the cleaver blade against the skin of my arm, my limbs still unable to respond. "It's my turn now," she hissed slowly, no longer a definite shape but rather a horrid shadow blacking out the room. "To protect you. Anyone not with us is against us. I will protect you." The cleaver broke the skin and my arm finally thrashed, slapping the blade to the ground as I staggered back. "John!" Lily cried, reaching forwards to grab my hand. "What the hell is wrong? He's not here!" "What?" I stammered, looking up at her from the ground, seeing her standing with sheer panic written across her worried face. I glanced to see no cleaver anywhere, nothing in her hands either, nothing but my cracked phone which she was presenting to me. My arm was clean of any cuts, perfectly fine as pale gray skin stared back at me. "Who's not here?" I stammered, my head still spinning as I felt my fingers twitch. "You know who?" Lily stammered. "You just started panicking about him. Are you okay, John? Where are you right now?" I staggered, looking at my hands before quickly scrambling to my feet. I'm in a warehouse, somewhere in Conifer." "What are you doing right now?" she continued, putting out her hands and nodding at me. "Who are you with? Take a second to breathe, John. We practiced this." "I'm fine, Lily," I spoke, shaking my head. I don't know what happened." My eyes flashed back to her, seeing her worried face staring back at me. "What was the last thing you said?" I continued slowly, further shaking my head and glancing around the room. "I said I don't think we should trust Halogen," Lily stammered. "We should stick together and try and find a way out of here. You weren't listening very well, just kind of staring off somewhere for a bit before suddenly panicking and dropping your phone. You can't do that, John. We need that in case we find a signal." Sorry." I shook my head, putting out my hands and sheepishly grabbing for the phone back. I think my head was hit a little harder than I thought. Things are still a bit fuzzy, but I'm fine, really. We should go before someone brave enough decides to come back here. You're right, Lily shakily agreed, still scanning me with worry. You sure you're good to go? Her hand held onto the phone for some time, fighting my grip for a brief interval before grudgingly letting it slowly slide from her grasp. I quickly shoved it into my pocket, heart still hammering. I'm fine.